I suppose it's my turn to welcome everybody to the Get Digital. My name is Paul Davis. I'm a lecturer in DCU, and I'm also one of the founders of Nathan Whiskey from a long time ago. So also in the West here, down in Mayo, unfortunately, not the lovely Sligo. Ah, what a shame. Throughout this week, Get Digital, we'll be exploring a range of topics related to business leadership and entrepreneurship, and in particular focus on how businesses at all stages and all sizes can harness transformational digital technologies to achieve their business goals. Basically, it's how to make things easier using digital technologies. At least I think so. We'll see. So turning to the session now, I'm going to introduce your speaker, Bob Coggins, Commercial Director of the White Hag. We've taken us through major insights and opportunities for brands to build customer engagement and loyalty nowadays. Please note, love to get your questions, so please use the Q&A function. I'll keep an eye on those, and when Bob is finished, we'll open up the floor using the Q&A function to see what questions are there and hopefully to engage in a bit of debate. Bob, over to you.
Hey, Paul, thanks a million for having me, and sorry I'm late. I'm really surprised. 6 minutes is not a delay at all, really, in Ballymore for technology. But it just shows the, I suppose, how we've caught up. What's interesting is actually that our brewery here in Ballymore relies heavily on broadband and relies heavily on the internet for a lot of what we do. The other end of the building, we have one of Ireland's largest garden centres, and they're a completely online garden centre called Quick Crop. So for a small town in the west of Ireland, we seem to have become increasingly reliant on what everyone's using these days to run conferences and meet each other and sell stuff. So, okay, I am Bob Coggins. I have stuck in my handle in the bottom corner of that slide there for people to find any content I mentioned during the presentation, or just to follow me, engage with me afterwards on Instagram or on Twitter. I am commercial director here in the White Hag Brewery in Sligo. We're based in Ballymore, it's about 15 miles south of Sligo town, small 1,500 person town. And we're based here mainly because of the water profile for making beer, but also because it's a good value place. It's a reasonably economically good value to build a business in a town like this. I'm my own background. I'm formerly CEO of Campus.ie and Havas Creative Agency. So part of the Havas Worldwide Network. I ran that as managing director for 5 years up to 2019. All of my experience in marketing and advertising was digital and experiential. Obviously, as a MD of an agency, we made TV ads and we did lots of print advertising, etc. But my own background was mainly in digital and experiential, which would probably become obvious later on. I was a non-exec founder here in the White Hag, so got involved in getting the brand and the business up and running when we put it together back in 2013. But just in putting in equity and sweat equity while the brewery was building, and I moved to the brewery full time in 2019. So that's me and the two co-founding partners of the business, Paul and Brian. I essentially oversee marketing and sales in the White Hag, which are two pretty huge areas, but between the three of us, we divvy up the main functions of the business. And I am the definition of zero budgeting. If you are familiar with the term, it's what we thrive on here in the White Hag. What I'm going to speak about, I'm going to keep it really niche, and I'm going to keep it really tight, and I'm going to keep it to my experiences. And I'm going to speak about the difference in behavior between small and big brand behavior, and how conditions and events allow for ruthless efficiency and instant activation when an opportunity is present. So opportunities that have arisen and presented themselves to me, I'll bring you through them and hopefully give you some context for them as well. I'm going to do that over 3 steps over the next kind of 20-25 minutes. Any questions you have or any observations, get them in the chat as we go, and I'm happy to bring them up afterwards. Sorry, that's the slide I'm supposed to bring through. So my experiences previously in alcohol were with Heineken and Edward Dillon. So Edward Dillon run a lot of brands in Ireland like the said Southern Comfort, they would have Jack Daniels, Bacardi, and a bunch of others. And so I worked on directly with blue chip drinks companies, global brands. And so I kind of knew how they behaved, and I understood what they needed to do and how they engage with consumers and how they brought consumers on board. Crucially, I suppose the 5 areas that I would have observed being crucial for drinks brands in particular was the connection with consumers. So the creative and how it connected, events, loyalty, engagement, and experience. And experience being the piece that became most obvious to me as the way to engender and grow loyalty within your audience. And I suppose what I've benefited from is what I'm going to try and shed some light on, the difference between big beer and small batch. So your large international conglomerate breweries and your small independent local regional breweries. And to do this in the context of marketing, I'm using a reference that's available on my social link tree. It's by a guy called Colin Gordon. And the idea is to understand what is marketing, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of definitions of what marketing is or what marketing does. People confuse marketing with promotion, with advertising, with sales. And his definition is quite simplistic. It's that marketing is making selling easier. It's as simple as that. Now, I think once you've got that mindset, once you adopt that mindset, everything is marketing when it's done right. So PR, events, comments on social media, delivery drivers, t-shirt, the works. Everything is a marketing opportunity. And from the basis of a zero budgeting perspective, you only work on or develop marketing that works. So you in a small business, you can be quite quick to cut stuff or generate stuff that works. We have, I suppose, a huge amount of opportunity in craft brewing to develop that those platforms, and it's been important for us over the last year. So I suppose what I'm going to try and do is give you an example of those differences between the big beer and small batch in the past 13 months. So what we've seen in the last year has been a crisis for society, for government, and for businesses. And within that crisis, it's also emerged and opened up opportunities, huge opportunities for brands, and then huge crisis for brands. So as habits and behaviors have changed overnight, and I mean, consumer habits, personal habits, large businesses and brands cease to exist, cease to be relevant to us in our in our day-to-day life. So our favorite pub, our favorite restaurant, our concerts, our sports teams, all those drinks brands that made up our social lives and our social interactions with others had just stopped, had ceased to exist. And as part of that, I suppose we, in the White Hag, were quite conscious that our business lived hand to mouth, week to week, month to month, on the profits of the product we sold. And when those products, 70% of which were being sold in pubs on draft, when they stopped selling, we were facing an existential crisis. So we were very, very conscious of that. But also, when you think about the bigger brands who have less of a connection directly to consumers, those brands spoke about their product through sponsorships and through media. And a lot of that finished and stopped quite quickly. So sponsorship of music events, activation through sporting events, and other popular social phenomena or media literally just stopped. So it created a vacuum. So all aspects of some of the best brands in the world stopped when people were in the pub to see those brands. And I suppose for us, we had to think about and react quickly. And this is the main difference. So we met here on March 13th and pretty much said we were going to have to close the brewery, shutter the brewery for a period. We weren't sure how long it was going to be, but we knew that pubs weren't going to be open for a while. So what's the point of producing beer? Only about 30% of our beer was going in package, and we didn't see people really investing in going to the independent outlets to buy our beer in such volumes that required us to remain open. But then it became kind of clear pretty quickly that we could probably benefit from the individuals who we had connected with previously, who liked our brand and knew our brand, who were still getting paid, who were working from home, who were still living and still needed to have a sense of day-to-day normality about themselves. So we decided to launch our online store properly, and we decided to, instead of pouring our beer down the drain that was in the fermenters behind me, we decided to have a go at properly becoming an e-commerce business in the space of 2 days. So we had a retail website built by the previous December. I built it after I joined the business full time. We had packaging developed, we had a relationship with DPD, and we were sending the odd box of beer here and there. What we did was we went out with a press release and said that we had 7,000 litres of a brand new beer that had never been tasted before in Ireland, and it was about to go down the drain because we didn't have anywhere to pour it or to serve it. And on the back of that, we put in place an event. We were going to have a live tasting event the following week for anyone who was good enough to buy beer off us and get that beer out the door directly to their house. And it worked better than we could have ever imagined. By the following Friday, when we thought we were going to be laying people off, we had all hands on deck here packing 200 boxes of 24 cans each of new beer directly to consumers all around Ireland and in the UK and in France. And that kicked off. It hockey sticked on that week, and it kept going ever since. What we've ended up doing is running live streams to launch every new beer. We've run live events, we've run festivals, we've run oyster and stout festivals here from the brewery. We've run corporate gigs, corporate events, corporate tastings. We ran that oyster festival. We ended up sending boxes to 200 participants from top Donegal to the bottom of France with oysters and stout. And I suppose what it did for us, it allowed us get a connection with a consumer that the big brands didn't have, and they weren't able to deliver. And it really reinforced for me that we could create something really quickly. In the space of 2 days, we could pivot and deliver an experience for our customers that they were longing for and that they were calling out for, and that ultimately was a savior, not only a savior for us, but it actually has grown our brand and grown our business for the past, instead of past 12, 13 months. And it's become a whole new channel for us. It's become a large chunk of our business. And so when I look at the differences between what we have had to do and have been able to do, and then, what other brands can't do, it's been phenomenal. It's been like polar opposites. The big brands went quiet. The first time Guinness had a good news story about their product was when they announced in October that they were fertilizing Christmas trees with stout. Our story was the day after we told we had to shut, and we had a new story. And that just shows you the difference in our ability to react, and any small business's ability to react. We didn't have to jump into legals and protocols that would help go into launching a new product. We just did it and thought about it afterwards. We stepped into a breach. We stepped into this vacuum because there was nothing happening. Because we had a product, we had a story, and we were relevant. And our story was it was emotive. It was the beer's going down the drain and the people are getting laid off unless you, the consumer, jump in and help us and be part of this. And consumers, I think, really bought into that and really wanted to support us, and they have done ever since. We created entertainment. We created feel-good engagement with consumers, and we still do. We're doing that all the time. It's something we learned we were good at, and we've grown in reach and sales, and we've grown our customer base. That leads me to the next point. I think one of the reasons I'm standing here at the moment, standing here in the brewery, I presume you can see me alongside, is because I can do this. My office is up here overhead, and our brewery is below our office. This is our canning line. Guys are canning here 2 shifts a day. This is our fermenting tank farm, bright tanks, hot water source down the back. Our tank farm, Gary, the brewing, local Sligo guy. That's the kettle down the end. That's the warehouse with all the cans, with our large wine cooler and our large barrel program. The reason I'm telling you this is because storytelling to me has become a massive part of the advantage for the underdog, the advantage for the small business. And I've got a MacBook Air, probably a 3-year-old one, that I've done probably 100 events from in the past year. We've done 3 corporate tastings an evening over the course of December. We've done all of the festivals and a lot of engagement directly from here. And I'm delivering this, I'm doing this because people want to see this. People want to know about the brand and they want to know the story. And that's the difference. It's really hard for a big brand to create a connection with consumers that we can give just by walking around our building or being here. It's really storytelling by the people that are involved in the business. I've sat in meeting rooms and pitches for months trying to create stories, trying to create a narrative for brands that don't have an authentic relevance to consumers, and it's painful. It's why really good marketing is expensive and hard to do, because you're creating something out of nothing. What we're doing is telling people what's happening here on the floor from the people who built the brewery, I suppose that relevance and that connection is the advantage, is that brand advantage. Small brands and businesses always have a story by definition, and by necessity are almost connected to or exposed to their consumer. And they also have that underdog story. It's useful. It's not always confidence inspiring, but it is useful. And so I suppose from my perspective, I use that phrase, small is interesting. Small is very interesting because people want to know how you manage to do what you do. And why are we successful at it? Because it's us. Because we're small, but also we are the archetype. We're the people who drink the beer, make the beer, and people want to be in the company of the people who are making the beer or making the brand. We live and breathe this brand. We wear it on our chest. We wear it on our face masks, and we are probably infectious and contagious with our brand. And people don't have to buy that; they just have to see it. So they don't have to try to kind of get their head around what a brand means or wants to do. That's a massive advantage. So when you separate personalities from the brand, and the brand has to live on its own, it gets harder to communicate those values and behavior, because behavior is implicit in human nature. But it's not impossible, and that's the real scale. So if you can scale a business where the brand remains personal and relevant, that's success for me. And I've seen it done in a couple of places. I always give the example of Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels has always been about Lynchburg, the home of Jack Daniels. It's a quintessential Southern US behavior, which has its home place in the root of everything they do. They always talk about home place. And home place simplicity in every communication you see from Jack Daniels. And nothing feels polished. It always feels like it has a rural rawness to it. And that consistency in brand behavior breeds familiarity required for customers to remain connected, in my mind. And it's something that it's a brand that's really well managed, and anyone who's ever worked on or seen Jack Daniels comms will understand that. Also, Ryanair have built a multi-million euro empire on telling stories of fighting for cheaper airfares. Cheaper airfares is their mantra, and it shows that I suppose you can build a massive business, but if your personality or tone of voice is always fighting for the consumer, then the consumer buys into that, because the consumer ultimately benefits and wants to be part of that. Michael O'Leary, whether you like him or hate him, you can't argue with the fact that he fights the government and the EU and individual countries, and that fight, that discussion, that constant fighting for his business and his consumer, it gives his brand oxygen. And so, I suppose my point is that we can keep that connection, you can keep that personality, that tone of voice as part of any brand as you grow, but it is a challenge. For us, for now, we're doing what we need to do to make our brand relevant to our current consumers and a potential new audience, a potential new consumer who's there every day, every morning, is an opportunity to connect with them. And the importance in this is bringing your brand, is making sure that your brand is part of all of those interactions. It's, I suppose, for small businesses who can't afford the noise normally, it's important to be heard when it's a lot quieter. And that, in retrospect, that's become very obvious to me. The opportunity in the past year was for brands to step up and say, okay, there's no pub, there's no big beer, there's no big spirits. There is not restaurants per se that you go to. The McDonald's aren't as relevant. Small, local, regional food brands and drinks brands stepped into the breach and made hay while the sun shined. And I think that they will not regress. I think that they'll continue to grow because they were relevant to the consumer when the consumer needed them. And I think that's the case for independent craft beer in Ireland. Case in point, we just launched in Lidl this week, nationwide distribution in almost 200 stores. And we're doing the same in Tesco, hopefully at the end of the month. The opportunity there is that the supermarkets have stepped up and noticed that independent beer is taking a far bigger chunk of the pie than previously, and it's in demand, it's being called for. So therefore, I think when you get the likes of large multiples and international multiples stepping up to the plate for smaller producers in Ireland, you're seeing a shift that isn't going to go backwards. It's not going to regress, hopefully. I think you got to be interesting when others have nothing to say. That's what's happened. One of the best references I think I have for this is a book by Adam Morgan. Now, Adam Morgan is a brilliant writer. He's best known, I think, for Eating the Big Fish, how challenger brands compete. But a better, well, in my mind, a better book is The Beautiful Constraint. Again, the link is on my bio or my social. In The Beautiful Constraint, he talks about how when you have a challenge that seems insurmountable, it makes you more creative. So you've got to be creative to get around that challenge. But one of the most common challenges for small brands is lack of budget. And I didn't link his book from my bio. I actually linked a video where he talks about Mattress Mick and how Mattress Mick has become a national icon based on his low budget attempts at marketing and advertising. But the beautiful constraint for us was we didn't have TV, we didn't have budgets, but what we had was the internet, a couple of webcams, and beer, and people wanted to be part of that. And so what you've seen in front of you here is two different events. The top event is Boxtravaganza, which was our international beer festival. We had beer from 23 breweries, so we got shipped to the brewery in advance, repacked them. We sent out 700 boxes, 24 beers in each, to people all around Ireland and the UK. And then we hosted a 7-hour production. So 7 hours interviewing brewers, having live music, live comedy, chat, whatever goes. And we had an audience of just over 3,000 people for that day for the festival. The festival turned probably north of 70 grand in a day. The second event is between two firms. So two fermenters, that's where I am now. I'm sure you get the reference to the Zach Galifianakis show. We held just a tasting event once a month. That particular event has Ken Grossman, the founder and owner of Sierra Nevada Brewing, probably the biggest independent brewery in the world. And we had just really interesting chats with people on a Friday evening over a couple of beers, and it consistently pulled in audiences that sold beer and connected with people who wanted a different point of view. And that beautiful constraint for us was what ultimately made us deliver experiences to our consumers. And this is my third point. The third part of this for me is understanding your consumer. This is, I've just given you a snapshot of a series of different events, both here in the brewery and in London and at other festivals. I spent years in brainstorms and creative meetings being guided by an archetype. This archetype, a fictional guy called Gary or Nathan, who was 27 and worked in PwC and loved Five Guys and Reebok and Asics trainers or whatever. And everyone in the room was aiming to build some kind of narrative or story to get Gary to drink or eat whatever it was we were selling. But you were working off it wasn't really a blue sky, it was a black hole in my mind. In a small brand, your customers will tell you what they want because you'll be talking to them, and you should never stop talking to them. So we can't avoid our customer feedback because they come to the brewery, you meet them at events, they email you, they call you, they message you on Facebook. And having been on the other end of social media, planning to have social media, running social media for brands, you don't get that engagement. You don't get that natural engagement you get here. And so I suppose I talk about understanding your consumer. It's not that you need to overstimulate people. You just need to engage them, and you will get the feedback that will allow you to deliver what they want from your business. And that usually what they want is, it's not always cheaper or it's not always faster. It's sometimes they just want to be connected, they just want to be part of your brand. And I think having that connection removes a lot of guesswork. So instead of testing, and trying to understand or guess what a consumer might want, if a consumer is telling you what you want, then your commercial message should be pretty straightforward, and then that turned into a creative message should engage and reap rewards. Like if I told you that every €1 you spent on advertising, you got €10 back in return, that's just exponentialism put into practice. You would invest in that every day of the week. And I've seen campaigns that we've done where we spent, maybe 100 quid on advertising, and you get $1,000 back straight away on the back of that. Sorry, this is a working brewery, and Connor cannot afford me the time to be here on my own for drive around and roll over boxes while I'm giving the presentation. But if you know your audience well enough, you can do this. You can spend a lot less on engagement and advertising, and your returns and rewards are far higher. The key, of course, is scaling that, building that audience while remaining connected and not losing or not having a diminishing return. So for Christmas, just as an example, Christmas this year, we wanted to build a fully branded Christmas box with a mix of beers, a card, a couple of trinkets for people to enjoy. But it was far less viable than a normal box of beer. So one-off box was costing a fortune. The mixing and packing of it was costing a lot. And advertising at Christmas costs a lot. But one of my mates in media who I was talking to about it said, just upweight the value of the box. If it's costing you more, then add more beer and charge more for the box. And he said, you can charge 100 quid instead of charging 60, 65 quid. I thought it was too expensive. And it turned out, sorry, wrong slide. Turns out it wasn't too expensive. It turned out that I went and asked 5 customers, just 5 regular customers, picked them at random and said, we're thinking of doing a 95 quid box for Christmas. Is that too expensive? They loved it. They said basically the feedback was everyone's over-indexing on Christmas presents this year. Everyone's going to be drinking at home. Everyone's looking for great gifts. Do it. So we ran 3 versions, €95, €86, and €65. The €95 version was the most popular by far. And for me, my customers had told me that, so it wasn't a risk. We knew it was going to be, and it wasn't going to put people off. And it was a massive success. I suppose the lesson for me in that is that if you leave those open opportunities for people to communicate with you and to feed back to you, or even ask people for solicit that feedback, you get real information that other brands, the big brands, have to actually try and solicit. They have to hire research agencies to go and find out. And smaller brands, your challenger brands, can get that right off the top. I suppose one of the things I want to kind of touch on is where your customers are, understanding your customers. This is one of the things that we did this year. We heat mapped our e-commerce customers to understand what our challenge was and where our customers were. And yes, you're going to have a strong index of craft beer customers around South William Street in Dublin, or around Spanish Arch, or maybe the Mall in Cork. But actually, what became obvious to us was that our customers are all over the island, not just in the Republic, but across the north of Ireland as well. And it really reaffirmed for us that we need to be in national distribution to reach our customers, but also that there was an opportunity across this island for our brand. And so when we took this and looked at it and talked to some potential partners, it became a compelling argument for, again, understanding your customer, showing we know our customer, and helping a retailer bring us on board using that information. And I suppose this brings me back to the Beautiful Constraint again. I'm kind of going to wrap up on this. You might ask, why is this relevant to you guys, or why is it relevant to anyone who's building out a business or working on a business in the digital economy today? I've told you about, I've given you, I think, 3 examples on the differences for me in my industry between big and small, and how that challenger brand can succeed. I think everyone, the Beautiful Constraint shows that everyone has a chance to create great marketing. You don't need 7-figure budgets. You just need permission and ambition. You need permission to engage your audience, and you're defined then by your ambition after that. The stories are there. The stories can easily be created. The content can be created. And I haven't done this yet. I haven't cracked it. I haven't done enough to write a book or teach other people how to do it. I've barely done enough to give a presentation for half an hour on it. But I've seen both sides of the budget scale, and that's made me realize what's possible. Because when I was in big advertising for blue chip companies, everything that we did was only made possible by the scale of the budget. Whereas I think in small brands, everything that's possible is defined by your time and your ambition. That's pretty much it. If you're starting out in your career, and if you are in college and engaging with this, I would say the big blue chip is probably very attractive, and you get great experience from the big blue chip in a very defined role. The small challenger brand is where you learn more, you get all the experience, and you get some permission to fail and fly. And I don't think that you can cause yourself the blisters or get things badly wrong in big brands without a massive fallout. You can do that every day. We make mess ups here every day. We make mistakes every day, and we try to fix them and learn from them and move on. And that's pretty much the learnings and ramblings of Bob, the White Hag here in Sligo. I hope that's useful. I hope that's interesting. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those now, Paul, or observations.
Bob, listen, thank you. That was excellent. And again, I missed the bog extravaganza or the box extravaganza last year because I had remembered being at the Hag extravaganza the year before. And I am too sure whether people actually understand the impact of what you do for that. And I thought I'd mention it because I know COVID knocked the hell out of that, but as an event, and I'll ask you to tell people a little bit about the event, because I think that brought a huge amount of customer loyalty for yourselves from my personal reflections on it. And the fact that you hired a train to take people to the brewery.
Yeah.
Maybe give people a little story, because I think it's a lovely story and it's a great piece of advertising for something very simple on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Okay. So the festival, we started with about a week and a half's notice in Christmas 15. We said we'd have a party in our brewery for Christmas, and we just stuck up some stuff on social media and sent out an email to like 50 people who we had in the database, and we had 150 people here following Friday night in the brewery. We're like, Jesus, this is great crack, you know. We charged them 20 quid in, and then there was no charge at the bar. That was just a flat fee. And the first guys who came in at 3:15 were still there at 11:15 that night, stumbling home back up through Ballymote. And so the following year, we said, let's do a summer version of this, because it's going to be a lot easier and a lot more hospitable. Because Ballymote is cold at the best of times. It's probably snowing outside right now, never mind during the winter. So we put together a festival for about 8 breweries that following summer, and we had about 300 people here. The following year, we did a proper one here at the brewery, and it was 1,100 people bought tickets in advance, and it was way over what we expected. And so I had to go to Irish Rail and say to Irish Rail, look, there's 2 things we can do here. We're going to have 1,100 drunk people getting on the 10 o'clock train from Dublin at Ballymote, which mightn't be useful for anyone who's just enjoying their train journey down from Dublin. Nice quiet train journey when 1,100 drunk people get on. Or we could rent a train if possible. And they came back to us with a solution, which was renting a dedicated train later. So that train went into Sligo to back out, pull up in Ballymote, we filled the train and got everyone to Sligo that night. That's been a recurring feature. And it's the thing that now people come for. People come to have the festival and drink at the festival all day for the sing-song on the train back into Sligo. And you know, I get attendees coming from Russia, from Australia, from America, from France, Norway, Hungary, all over the world. And they just can't get their heads around the fact that we managed to rent a train for a beer festival. It's just not something you do in other places. You wouldn't even be able to do it if you were in Dublin, I would say. And that in itself, I'm glad you brought that up. That in itself encompasses what's possible from by a challenger brand with a challenger mindset. You know that anything is possible. When in fact the festival wouldn't be possible at the scale at that. The last 2 we had were 1,500 people, which was our max capacity. over the course of the day, 10-hour day, here at the brewery at the front, 23 breweries, 90 beers, 4 bands, 6 or 8 food trucks. It's a big American style beer festival.
No, again, it was huge compliments, but particularly for a small brand to get the international link that you got out of that and the people traveling over to see it. And then demonstrating what major brands have been probably, unfortunately, not able to do, that local link as well. Right back into Sligo, right back into people recognizing the brand as being in Sligo, but being part of the community as well. And in a really nice way. So no, it was just an observation. I wanted to compliment you on it, and it was a shame COVID happened, because I would have loved to have gone on another one. It was definitely something, an experience that I remember.
Yeah. No, and look, one of the things you say this, rightly point out the connection to Sligo is very strong. It's our home place, but also it allows us to bring people to Sligo who want to come and experience craft beer, but they'll also benefit from food, the hospitality, the adventure sports, everything that Sligo has to offer. And so when we bring people back into Sligo town that night, the food places and the restaurants and pubs have all helped us. They've all sponsored the event to make it happen. And also, one of the best parts of that is the security aspect of the festival, whereby we have 4 security guys who work the festival for us. That's it. There's a really nice audience who come along, and there's very little trouble, or if any trouble. And at the end of the night, what we do is we pull the music. I stand up on the stage and say, right, the train's leaving in 10 minutes. If you're not on the train, there's no other way of getting to Sligo. And if that was a taxi, people had to be like, oh, you go out and tell him to hang on for 5 minutes, Or if it was a bus, one lad will be dispatched to go out and talk to the driver and keep them there. But when it's a train, it's a very different mindset. People just go, shit, the train's leaving. And they throw the drink into them, get a can for the train, and hop on. And then they're all in Sligo town for the night. They're the responsibility of another business from then to 4 in the morning. But yeah, no, it's a brilliant experience. But for me, experiences are what are delivering our brand into people's hearts and minds. And we continue to do that.
A couple of other questions. Somebody commented, great story. Can I ask, through your journey, you've opened a number of new sales channels, traditional and digital. You mentioned that small brands' advantage is having that direct connection with their customers. My question, how do you capture those verbatums and data points? And how do you use them to make decisions? Oh, somebody's trying to get really technical here with us.
So we capture verbatums through email and DMs and social media. And if we spot trends, or we get multiple requests for a particular product or a particular service, we generally try to build it in. If someone's asking for a particular mix of beers or a particular style or a way of doing things, then we try to make it happen. Unless it's unviable, we explain it and we try to get them to do something else. Data points, we do follow our data. We watch when people buy, we watch when people engage with us, and we try to then tailor our messaging and our timing and our strategy to ensure that we make it easy as possible for people to engage with us. One of my kind of goals for both the trade and the consumers is to make it as easy as possible to buy our stuff, to buy our products, and to engage with our brand. If it's hard, if it's long-winded, then you're just not going to get that engagement. So we do that. We direct connection. Previously, a year ago, we didn't have really direct connection. We just had random queries coming in. But because now you've got connection, you've got a mandate to speak to consumers directly. You now understand where they are, what they want, and what they're consuming. And it's a lot different to what you think. The craft beer consumer is not someone sitting on South William Street with no knees in their trousers, tattoos, and half a head of hair. They are a very engaged audience at every age, across all genders, across all sexual preferences, across all races. And we've discovered that over the last 3 or 4 months, especially as we've looked at it more and more.
I think the next question probably builds on that, and really the question is asking, like, how do you maintain or engage an audience on the social media? How do you keep that going?
New products, re-emerging products, and insights into the brewery, insights into what's happening in the brewery at any one time. We generally find that our audience is very engaged by understanding what's going on in the brewery and what's going on with the team. We had we've had challenges with that. We've had challenges around how people in the brewery are using social media personally and for the business. And we took a step back from talking about the people, and we're kind of refocused on the brand and the products and what we do, and we'll layer our people back into it as we emerge from that. And we're seeing a very diverse group of people joining the brewery in the workforce as well. And that becomes an interesting story in itself.
Yeah, I think that the next question sort of builds on that and says, like, what's the future for the brand? I mean, and it ties in a little bit to the last one I see here, which is, one says, how do you plan to scale your business? When the other says, but when you look at the White Hag itself, what's the meaning behind it? Where did it come from? Does that have an impact on an understanding for non-Irish people? I think the two are linked in many ways. You've a very strong, for me personally, you've a very strong brand that's locational as well, that I think is really important to you. But that's me personally looking at it.
Yeah.
And I think the name is easily translatable in terms of your brand image, but I'll let you talk about that, and maybe perhaps a little bit about how you do you plan to scale it, or are you happy where you are?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'm going to open the cold room. Let you into the cold room for a minute. So this is our cold room. This is where we store the beer that's going to retail. So these are all 4-packs that are going to retail at the moment. Because of the new alcohol legislation, you can't sell multiple units in more than one unit at a discounted price. So these are the 4 for 10s. And if you grab that, and I'm going to grab another beer here. One of the things that we have set out to do is create a brand mark that is very identifiable from a distance. Now, from where you are, Paul, can you read anything on that pack?
I can see the H, and I can see the logo in terms of shaped around, but then I'm blind, so don't feel hurt by me.
No, Paul, I wouldn't be hurt by you. You're doing exactly what I wanted to do. The brand mark, the WH, is consistent all the time, right? Yeah. So it's recognizable from any distance, repeated on all our cans on the front of the can. Okay, so what you're seeing here, I suppose, is the definition of a brand mark.
Yeah.
Now, what you can do with that is you can do that in any country around the world. You can do that for people who can't read. You can do it for you can do it in any language. It's universal. A really strong brand mark is key. The second thing is that English is becoming if not has become the first world language for now. It may change again, but in English, the words the, white, and hag are, in any language, they're pretty simple words to learn in English, and therefore they may not have relevance. People may not understand who the White Hag is, but it's very easy to reference, very easy to replicate, very easy to remember. So the recall on it is pretty strong. And the White Hag is Mother Nature. So in our belief systems, in our old ancient Celtic belief systems, the White Hag was Mother Nature. She was the being, the female who created the earth and created everything on the earth. And when you look at belief systems, similar belief systems around the world, beyond Celtic, Greek and Roman, etc., lots of belief systems have a similar character, a similar deity that they refer to. And so it's not going to be difficult for us to translate Mother Nature and the White Hag into other cultures and other understanding, other belief systems. So at the moment we export to 8 countries, and we've never really had an issue with people wanting to get translations or wanting to understand what we say. One of the traps we fell into at the start, we had the Irish IPA, Bran and Scullen, and we had Maeve Rua, which is our red ale. And because they were in Irish, they were pretty tricky for people to understand or engage with. So, or even to call, and that's a tricky one, right? So if you've got someone at the bar, the last thing you want them to do at the bar or in the store is to not be able to say the thing that they're trying to order, because you'll avoid ordering. You don't want to look like a fool of a craft beer customer. You can't say, you can't pronounce the word. And so we've avoided words or phrases or sayings that are tricky. Instead, we go for an anglicized version of it or a translation of it. Hence the Ninth Wave Little Phone or Phantom KZLPA. But the future for the brand is there'll be a brand refresh. I'm sure it will be centered around that roundel, that core traditional branding piece that we've generated over the years and reinforced. And we'll probably speak about the White Hag a bit. There's a bit of storytelling to be done, and we pride ourselves in good storytelling. So at the top, you may have noticed that I use the phrase called modern myth making, and that's something that we would do. We see ourselves doing. We also reinterpret ancient beers in the brewery, and that's something that allows us to talk to our past, talk to our heritage here in Sligo.
I have to say, trying to build a brand, and we're trying to do it on the whiskey side, and it's a slightly longer side, but it's locational, and it's for us. It's all about the provenance and the story that you can tell. And I thoroughly agree with you. I think it's really important to engage the consumer, and your customer. I won't use the word consumer in that general way, but your individual customer. Strangely enough, even when you're selling whiskey, it's not the 55, 60-year-old or the 70-year-old with the drop to the side. It's a whole mix, and we're discovering a whole impact of women in whiskey, which is a really unobvious choice. But that switch from white spirits to brown spirits. So yeah, I concur. I have to say it's been a great presentation. I'm conscious of the time. And what I'd like to do is to really say thank you, Bob, for all of that. That was excellent. And I think what was really useful for people is also to see the physical building. I think you bring people in touch, and that's really nice.
Okay, well, look, I have one other surprise for you, which is that if there's anyone out there who is close to a computer, and you are, the first person to try and order a case of beer off our website and use the code GETDigital, we'll get it for free. So free €60 worth of beer directly to any one participant today. So that doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth.
What was it you said about that multiple?
Yeah. Look, thanks a million, Paul, for having us. I hope people enjoy GETDigital. I think it's a brilliant initiative, and I would find it very challenging to be part of this normally, to make my way to DCU and be part of this. Not that I'd love to, but this has been brilliant to be able to engage like this. If anyone wants to connect with me, find me on my handle is there on the presentation on Twitter or Instagram, and the links I talked about. You probably know them already, Paul. You probably know Colin Morgan and obviously the Beautiful Constraint or Eat the Big Fish. Yeah, really interesting stuff.
I have to remark that the next session is going to feature Cormac McCann, the creative director at Pluto, and Deirdre O'Sullivan, senior manager at Pluto, for a session on how Pluto and DRCC, and by the way, excuse me for reading because I can't remember all of these offhand, leverage TikTok to reach a youth audience. Yeah, my kids will be embarrassed to say that I do look at TikTok, but there you go. Fascinates me every now and again. Maybe it's just age. It's something boring to do at home. Anyway, the next session begins at 2:30. My final thanks to Bob again, and hopefully we can talk soon. I'm going to sign off for everybody, and listen, goodbye.